Thank you for joining me on the show today. For everybody tuning in, we are here with Leen Kawas. Leen, welcome. Thank you for coming on today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. This is I'm pumped. It's we got some great topics to talk through today. I'm really excited to get your perspective, just simply because you do have quite a unique background, and so I think that's probably where I think we should start, is just sharing with the audience a little bit about you and your background and where that's led you to where you are today.
Yeah. So I think I have a really interesting background, starting my career as a pharmacist. And, I'm in the pharmaceutical industry and bringing that real, experience from the market into my scientific journey into drug development. Starting a company, I started Athera Pharma, and now I started the fund, Propel Biopartners. And being on the ground, if that makes sense. And now I'm an investor, which I'm trying to help the next gen companies to really scale and become successful, not only in raising capital, but also in building companies, sustainable companies, scalable companies, and successful products. So having that, I would say, full spectrum experience gives me a unique vantage point. And with my company, Athera, I went through the whole thing from a single person company, slugging through the first million and ultimately raising 400 million, taking the company public, late stage products and clinical development. It's been an amazing experience. And I always try to say this, I didn't grow up here in the US. I came here to finish my education, get my PhD from Washington State University. But there is something very special about the US, which is entrepreneurship, innovation, and people who are passionate to be in industries that could have an impact on people's life.
Yeah, for sure. And I think this is just such an exciting time to be in everything related to biotech and pharma and all the correlating industries that we're seeing. There's just so much innovation right now. And so I'm really excited to dive into that. I think one of the most interesting things that you alluded to was just how you, from having a unique perspective, you understand so many different parts of business, everything from, both the science perspective to the financial aspect and what it actually takes to be an operator in a company. So I think that's like the perfect combinations as a venture capitalist and thinking about, what is the next wave of technology that's going to create meaningful products that change the world. And so I would love to kind of get your thoughts on more specifically how this influences your strategy as an investor, and everything from how you kind of think about picking entrepreneurs and products and so on and so forth, as well as how you think about diligence. I'm sure is slightly different than how a lot of VCs are. You have more insight. I mean, I'm sure that really helps too, just from a diligence perspective. So could you kind of walk us through that life cycle from evaluation diligence to moving forward with a company?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we do investments in both private and public companies. And the areas that we really focus on, starting with the science, it has to be exciting science, something that is addressing an unmet need, right? A lot of people think about just huge indications, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, some sort, like parts of the oncology, but there's a lot of unmet medical needs. So we start with the science. The entrepreneurial team is very important, and it doesn't have to be the traditional, entrepreneurs that has already had an entrepreneurial experience, successful exits. It's really the mindset that we're looking for, James. People who have a growth mindset, who acknowledge the value add that they bring, but are willing to bring other expertise and listen to feedback. The team is very, very important as we evaluate companies because sometimes drug development is very risky. If it didn't work, if the first product didn't work, I need to feel confident that the team are going to continue to create value. And then the other part is the corporate structure. how the
Okay.
company operates internally is very important. How they're managing their studies. If they are a clinical stage company, it's very important for us to evaluate how they're thinking about their clinical trials. The focus on the patients. Patient centricity is something that we focus on, because we believe if companies at very early stages, they start to try and understand the patients, how they're impacted by the disease, the family around the patients, then they will build a more effective drug development and clinical strategy.
Mm-hmm.
How they plan to how they're going to manage the relationship with the FDA, regulatory strategy. That's a very important part of how we evaluate companies. And it turns me off when a company says the FDA, is a big barrier, that they're going to like shut us down. Actually, from my experience, the FDA has been very collaborative and very innovative, and they think outside of the box. So that's the type of companies that we're looking for. And of course, on top of it, the financial strategy, financial planning, and strategic fit, because we're looking at larger companies to acquire the companies that we're looking to invest in or invested in. And that's very important for us. I feel like from my experience as an entrepreneur, when I interacted with a large number of funds, I've seen the whole gamut. Some funds, unfortunately, are too scientific, focused on the basic science, and they miss out on the big picture. And there are funds that are on the other extreme where they're just financial and they focus on the financial. I think having that holistic overview, it gives us an advantage. And even after we write the check, we want to be value add. We want to support the entrepreneur and increase their probability of success. So we work with them, we hear them out, and we try to support them beyond, the investment. After we make a decision to invest, it's the journey beyond. Mm-hmm.
So are you also actually helping with the FDA? Like, is that a process that it sounds like you're very familiar with? So is that one of the strategic value adds that you bring to your portfolio, is saying, hey, we can help you navigate this process? Or is that something like you essentially have an expectation for them to already know prior to you investing?
Some come with knowledge, and we appreciate that, and others no, and we either from us directly, but we also have an amazing operational advisory board that has a lot of experience on the different aspects, from inventing an idea or a drug up to commercialization, multi-billion-dollar markets. So we do support the companies and we bring our feedback to them. For me, what I look for is how they're thinking about it. They don't have to nail it. They don't have to have it like fully, because you have to be adaptive, right?
Right.
As you get to know more data and capture more data from your clinical trials, you need to be adaptive and also somewhat proactive with the FDA to try to optimize and increase the chances to deliver treatments to patients that obviously need it.
Sure. And I guess just diving more into that, I mean, where as an investor and also like as a founder, like where should companies, startups be thinking about building an innovation right now? Like, what do you think are like the biggest opportunities in today's market to disrupt pharma?
It's been very interesting. I think the overlap between life sciences and technology, companies that are nimble and fast in adopting a lot of the technological advancement into their discovery and drug development and clinical development, are going to move much faster and will become more efficient. And from my point of view, they're probably going to have higher probability of success. We believe that. Because there is life sciences and drug development is very rich in data, and people who empower their product development with technology using software or hardware to capture data and analyze data and use predictive models to help them have a continuous real-time optimization, I think are going to benefit significantly, whether they're doing personalized medicine. There's protein aggregation or protein. There's a lot of companies that we're excited about that work on protein degradation technologies. But the way that they're thinking about it, and there's so many companies, we've been excited about a couple that we felt that they're approaching the science, basic science, clinical development in a continuous way, and they're looking at translation and how they can use technology to enable acceleration of their product development and potentially increasing the probability of success.
Well, so it sounds like though, like some of the potential products could be like actually developing these software, these data sets, these data tools and software tools that help accelerate product development, right? I mean, because otherwise it's like you're developing the software plus your core product. It's like two different businesses.
Exactly.
Right?
I love it. I love it. Exactly. So that's part of what we're looking for. We call it healthcare IT or tech. To look for companies that are developing tools for drug developers to use. But the point is, we want drug developers or product development, whether it's a device or a therapy, to think outside of the box, approach these potential partners and guide them to develop products that can help them in their clinical development. And that's important. I think my background as a pharmacist helps me, and I had a clinical pharmacy experience, so I did interact with patients. It's very important for drug developer and technology developer to really understand the patients. To simplify it, to talk about like who are the patients? The patients are the customer for the life science industry. To really understand the patients, and how can we use technologies that can help us test for drug effects in patients? Also, how can we use technology to empower us to accelerate personalized treatments, drug development? But this is where we're looking for innovation. We're looking for amazing teams that have a growth mindset.
Sure.
Beginners mindset, where they can use all of their knowledge, but they're still approaching new challenges in a fresh perspective. That's what we're looking for.
Sure. So when you say personalized drug treatment, are you referring to, could you give me a little bit more insight on what you mean by that?
Personalized, I think a lot of people connect personalized therapy or personalized treatments to genetic profiling. If I want to be more, exotic, maybe epigenetic, which is the coding on top of the DNA. People think, okay, these are like signatures that we can understand and know if there's a mutation. We take the patient and treat them with the specific drug that target that mutation or protein expression. But I look at it in a more comprehensive way. It's gene, the genetic basically coding, epigenetics, protein expression. On top of that, we need to look at the phenotypical presentation, enzymes, biomarkers. We look at, for me, I think the personalized medicine should also be like more holistic, gender, socioeconomical status, treatment history, any other concomitant medications, baseline vitals like weights, heart, like there's so much that we can then look at the human body as a system and make informed decision. That's like the big vision. And we're seeing like exciting companies that are taking pieces of that, but I think the future would be, how can we truly create a personalized treatment strategy end to end to really change, like if we have a patient, we can like look at it as a whole system, not just in silo and just focus on one thing.
Right. I think the other thing, I mean, so I would assume too, it's like there's so much for doctors too that are thinking about personalized treatment. There's just so much, like there's so much knowledge and so many things out there. There's so many things to consider. I would assume that if you have some technology that is powering this, it's going to be a lot more consistent and data driven in terms of the approach to personalized care, right?
Absolutely.
Versus like just a human kind of just an imperfect person, no matter how knowledgeable, is not going to be able to provide probably the level of consistency or effectiveness as a technology would, right?
Exactly. I mean, but it's the two, right? It's the two
Right.
things. How can we empower executive decision with uh, uh, comprehensive data,
Hmm.
inform it. Basically, we need the data to inform our decision making. Ultimately, hopefully, long term, we'll have machine learning, deep learning that will capture the executive ability. Uh, but what I'm looking for is people to move away from the very traditional drug development and like because for example, Alzheimer's disease. Okay,
Hmm.
this is an example that I like to give. Uh, I've worked on Athira's drug, fosgonimeton, phase 3 Alzheimer's drug. We've done a lot of things in a very different way. We brought the patients very early on. We looked at the protocol. We brought the patient voice into the protocol. A lot of people was like, nobody does that. And then we partnered with the sites, the physicians, and then one thing is like, why I was working on a new way that we can capture the global change in the disease, because that Alzheimer's drug development is very hard, right? It's very hard to measure cognitive improvement. And the example that I wanted to give is ADAS-Cog, which is one of the tools, the main tools that we measure cognition in Alzheimer's drug development, is older than me. It's been developed in 1984. I was born in 1985. Okay. So, and for us not to have the motivation to say, like, obviously it's not the perfect tools, because yes, drug has been failing, but it's more than that. I would say like Biogen has been great. Even Lilly, they're trying to push for different ways that Alzheimer's drug development can be approved. Athira, when I was there, we were also pushing for innovation of how we think about drug testing and clinical development, and how can we bring effective treatment that measure endpoints that are meaningful for the patient and the caregiver. And the same type of approach can be applied to a lot of other indications and drugs that are being developed currently in the marketplace.
So when it comes to drug development, though, I mean, is the primary reason for lack of innovation because people, is it like a mindset thing or an education thing, or is it a regulation issue? Is that my assumption as an outsider, and this is what I want to be corrected on, is like, as somebody who doesn't know the space very well, it would seem to me like, oh, that's a regulation issue. But it also sounds like there's like just a mindset, or people are kind of stuck in patterns, if you will, doing the same repeated motion. So I'm kind of curious to get your thoughts on what seems to be the issue there.
Okay, like I just want to say there is a lot of innovation, okay, out there. It's amazing.
Right.
The industry is doing so much work to really have an impact on people's life. And that's something I get excited about, is when I see a founder that has this motivation of, I want to develop this treatment because it will help people, right? It will improve the quality of life. Now, why we don't see this level of innovation translate into treatments at a faster rate? I think you're right. I think that a lot of people, you would hear, it's the regulators, it's the FDA, they're so rigid. My experience with the FDA has not been like this. They've actually, they care about two things. The FDA cares about two things: if the drug is safe, and does it work? Okay. If you come to the FDA with a package that gives them confidence that the drug is safe and the drug works, they're not gonna block treatments to get to people who are needing, right? Like it's
Right.
And that's not their job. Their job is to make sure that their drugs that work, that are safe, get to the marketplace. So I don't see the FDA. I feel it's like the scapegoat. Anyone who's like, oh, it's the FDA.
Right.
N of one, N of one. I have to say, like, being a scientist, one person, I have a few like colleagues that agree with me. But I don't think that the FDA is the biggest barrier here.
So what do you think, like like in terms of the founders, like what are the most common like traps they fall into or roadblocks that they hit through the
think
process?
that for me, the biggest barrier is the term industry standard. It's I tell you a real antidote like story. So I was working with a CMO of my company, Athera, and I wanted to do something new with the clinical design, the protocols. And he kept saying, Leen, you cannot have, the FDA will never accept this. It's a new term, that I learned also. This doesn't pass the red face test. I'm like, what do you mean? Like, it's scientific. The data that we're going to produce from this design is going to support the efficacy of the drug. And then the other term that I learned also in that experience, you cannot have the cake and eat it too. I'm like, I don't understand. It's science. And then we go to meet with the FDA and they agreed on everything. Okay. Right. And this, like the CMO, when we left, he looked at me, it's like, I guess, Leen, you can have the cake and eat it too. And I'm like, no, it's not about it's like, this is a logical drug development strategy that gives confidence to the FDA that we're going to understand the efficacy of the drug and the safety in a meaningful way for the patients. How can the FDA say no to that, right? How can anyone say? But there is like, this has never been done before. This is not the industry standard. I'm like, but the industry standard is not working. We need to think outside of the box. And this is where I want to see people like, okay, we learned from the failures these key points, and I want to apply them to optimize my drug development and increase the chances that I'll be successful and work collaboratively with all the stakeholders, patients, physicians, FDA, supply chain and manufacturing, all of these, put them all together, operational team, scientists, and work together as a single unit to increase the chances of successful outcome.
For sure. And so when you're in terms of investing, are you bringing on additional LPs that specialize in different areas, or how do you think about platform services or bringing in specialists to support your portfolio that essentially need this ecosystem to be successful? Like, what's your kind of thoughts on that?
I love that. Thank you for asking this question. When I started Propel, is I looked at, okay, what are the areas that each entrepreneur is going to go through when they're developing a product that is in the life science industry, in the different areas, whether it's drug development, device development, diagnostics, on top of that, the healthcare IT. So we did bring a number of people, Ron Farkas, he was with the FDA. He wrote actually the guidances, drafted several of the guidances and the FDA. And what I love about Ron, for example, he's an FDA, like he's an FDA guy, okay? Like he is very logical. Like, so how can you like not trust that the FDA is going to be logical when people that are coming from the FDA are very logical and they give very clear, concise feedback? That's the other thing about it. Like, it's very concise, like direct. Like there's no confusion about how is he thinking about something. Ron Krall, who was the chief medical officer of GlaxoSmith, had 25 drugs approved. You would expect someone like Ron is like not willing to do work and just like gonna come for like very tough questions. He actually rolls his sleeve. That's the other thing, is like, for me with Propel, I told the team, no mediocrity. Everyone needs to roll their sleeve and do the work. And what I'm looking for, even if someone has 30 years of drug development experience, Ron brings a lot of innovation. That's why he has 25 drugs approved, because he didn't approach every drug development strategy in the same way. He brings innovation, and he works hard. That's the thing that blows my mind, is like how hard he works. And he's also very humble. Like when he goes into a new product, he doesn't say, I did this and that and that, and I'm very successful. He tried to understand what are they trying to achieve and help guide them in a thinking process to help them optimize their product development to increase the chances. And we have experts in supply chain, CMC and supply. CMC is controlled manufacturing for product, and we have experts in that. Eric, he worked on manufacturing and supply chain for the 3 top COVID drugs. So also having that deep experience is very important. And when we work with a company, that's what I love, is when we're not just on the board, we're not just trying to give them what we believe or what we think they should do. We try to work with them. And then when a company is facing a challenge, is bringing the right expert to support them. And we don't want the experts that come in and like, so this is how it's done, you should do it in this way. We want experts who are able to listen and help guide and not make decisions and take over, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I feel like just having partnerships and relationships in the ecosystem that understand just the different phases of what a startup is going to go through, and being able to plug in the right resources at the right time is so important. And that's really, that's the differentiator. It's like the investors that really can support the startups at each phase of drug development, in your case, are going to be the ones that probably are going to end up having the best deal flow as well. Because you're gonna be able to show that value proposition. And if I could just, I want to learn a little bit more here on. So let's say you get the FDA approval. What does the life cycle of the startup look like at that point in time? Is it licensing out to a distributor? Is it selling the product altogether? What are the different strategies from that point forward once you have FDA approval? Could you walk me through that?
Yeah, there's multiple options that could. We also have Mike Gibbs and Sylvia McBrien, who commercialized several products, and they have extreme success in that area. And there's different options, right? If it's a smaller company that has an innovation and they're really good in they have an engine for innovation, and they have no interest in taking it to the next step of commercialization, very similar to the tech industry, they would partner with a larger pharma. And that's, pharma right now is, we believe, at least as we're doing our analysis in the fund, large pharmaceutical companies right now are in the cycle where they're looking for innovation to build up their pipeline. So that could be an option for companies who are close to approval. They don't have to get to FDA approval.
Oh, okay.
That typically large pharma, they just want to get information or data that gives them confidence that this company is going to be successful.
Right.
But sometimes it happens at approval. Sometimes it even happens when the company starts commercialization and, they figure out that this is not what they want to do, and they find the right partner, or pharma looks for opportunities within the smaller companies. The other thing is, there's different ways that you can commercialize a product. There's orphan indication. Orphan indications is where you have a small number of patients, and they have a special treatment from both the FDA and reimbursement. Basically, the FDA, there's accelerated pathways for approvals, and there's a lot of benefits for orphan indication, because they want to incentivize companies to develop products for these smaller markets. And then the pricing margin is also more healthy for orphan indication. So revenue can be, meaningful for companies that are developing orphan indications. These are smaller indication. A lot of the smaller companies are very successful in taking on these smaller indication while making significant profit. And then other options is that companies that are planning to build everything in-house, it kind of takes time and very expensive and high risk. But some do, which is, I don't say that it's wrong. I wouldn't come directly say, no, it's not the right thing. There are some specifics around each company. And then finally, companies that partner with distribution, similar to there's distribution partners that have their own fleets of commercialization. And that's something I think companies should, even small companies, they should understand their options. They should understand what they can do at the commercialization stage, because it will help them negotiate. If pharma comes in and they're interested, but the smaller company, they don't understand the commercialization optionality that they have, they're going to undersell themselves, right? So understanding that is important when CEOs and board of directors negotiate for any type of transaction with large pharma.
That is really, really interesting. Well, thank you for sharing your thoughts on that. And I want to make sure that we have time to cover what's going on with the Anti-Inflation Act, how we should be looking at this and how it's going to impact the industry. Do you have specific thoughts on this? Like what could you share with us on this topic?
Overall, the Anti-Inflation Act, it did trigger a very negative, I would say, especially from large pharma around the small molecule, large molecule differences, like the exclusivity or like ability for payers to negotiate price after I think 9 years versus 13 years. That created a lot of angst in the industry. I think there were some aspects of the orphan indication that also created some reactions. For me, the way that I look at it, it's first of all better than what people expected, much better. So that's a good thing for our industry. And then the second part is there's two parts when you're thinking about commercialization of product. It's like price and access. The higher the price, the lower the access. The more reasonable price, the higher the access. So your revenue, pricing your product at the upper end doesn't mean that you're going to have higher revenue. It's actually not easy to price a product, right? Because if you overprice it, you could end up with a flop. Like Aduhelm, the Biogen drug for Alzheimer's, they went out with $58,000. That was a very high price tag. I think that led to Biogen stopping any effort. This could be a multi-billion-dollar drug, but just like trying to price it at the upper end created this eliminated access. So I feel the Anti-Inflation Act, one way that we can look at it, it's going to increase access, which is why we are working in this industry, right? If you have the ability to manage pricing, and the negotiation with CMS is not that they're going to like not pay for any drug. It's like the highest 26 drugs, highest priced 26 drugs. They're going to try to negotiate it. So I don't think it's that severe. And I do think that if we work with it, it could increase access.
Well, so wouldn't the argument be though, like if there's potentially price ceilings or whatnot, or that there potentially could be less innovation?
It's not price ceiling. Let's just be very clear.
So could you explain that to me? Like
how
does that actually?
There's no price ceiling.
Okay.
Like and I agree with you. If there's price, that's the thing. There was like there was a fear that there could be price ceiling impact on patents and all of that. It's not that. It's just like that the companies after 9 years or 13 years, if it's a small molecule, it's 9 years. If it's a large molecule, 13 years. After they commercialized it for this long, they have to go and like negotiate pricing, negotiate a lower price. So I mean, and if that happens, it means that there's more access to patients. So I don't think it's going to have like that severe of an impact. I do think I talked to an analyst who works at the Hill, and I said, why did you create that difference between a small molecule versus large molecule? Small molecules are chemicals that are easier to manufacture, have, from my point of view, small molecules, they're typically oral or sub-Q injection, and they have like really large access as a product profile. Versus biologics, a lot of them you have to go into the clinic. It's more demanding. Historically, 20 years ago, biologics were developed by biotech companies, smaller companies, and small molecules were developed by the large companies. But now it's completely mixed. Like there's a lot of small companies that are developing small molecules. And this is where I asked him, why do you have that difference? And he's like, because we want to give small companies incentive to continue to develop large molecules, biologics that are considered more innovative. And, large pharma, they don't need it for their small molecules. I'm like, but you understand that that's not the reality of the industry, that small molecules are being developed by small companies and large molecules are being developed by large companies. So it's not what you were trying to achieve is not. So that's the thing. It's like, I think that sometimes, not understanding the industry patterns, but at the end of the day, I don't think it's going to have a big impact. I think the fear is after there's a fear in the industry that it's going to apply to every drug. It's not just the highest, the drug that costs our system the most. It's going to, have a reach through to other drugs. But for now, I think it's reasonable. And I do think that it could help increase access to treatments.
Well, could it also incentivize, and I'm just like thinking this through, could it also incentivize companies to set their initial price higher because they know they're going to have to negotiate down after a certain period of time?
That's what I'm saying. I think like pricing is an art.
Yeah.
So if you try to overprice it because you're going to have, it's not going to work, because it's
right. You're still not going to get.
You have to be very thoughtful. Now this is a new thing that you need to add to the equation, but it's not going to be the only thing that it's one additional factor that you include, but it's an art. Like pricing, if it's only driven to be thinking that if I increase the price, I'll increase my bottom line revenue. No, like that it's going to fail. You have to think about the patient population, access, and understand the market to be able to price it correctly.
So it doesn't sound like you think this is really a game changer. Like,
oh no, I think there's that it can have longer, like more issues long term. But I think we can work with it, and it's like at least removed a lot of uncertainty about a much worse, situation that we could be in. But it's, for me, the most important thing. It could potentially, if it's used effectively by the government and the payers and the drug developer, it could increase access to treatments, access of innovative treatments to patients, which is why we do everything, right?
Right. Yeah. So curious to get your thoughts on how pharma startups are being impacted by current market conditions, right? Like just with overall venture capital funding going down, do you feel like how do you feel like that's going to be impacting startups in this sector greater, in comparison to the greater startup environment? Like what are you seeing out there, and how do you think it's going to play out in pharma over the next 12 months?
Yeah, I think a lot of people talked about this, and for me, it's that's why the team is very important when you're evaluating a company, because how can they adapt to continue to create value in this environment? It is very hard to raise money in this environment. We're seeing much fewer deals at this point. Luckily for Propel, we're fresh funds, so we're not licking our wounds, if that makes sense. We're looking for innovation. We're looking for opportunities to invest in an effective way. But that's when we evaluate the financial strategy for a company, how they're going to manage their capital that they have to continue to advance their programs. And one thing that it's part of the corporate structure that we look at as we evaluate any company. If it's a company that has a huge employee number, overhead, and because this is how it's done, right? This is how it's historically been done. You build these huge teams, hierarchy, corporate structure, top down. Like this is a huge turnoff for me, because it means that the management, they don't know what they're not hiring intentionally, right? And they don't know how to outsource effectively. Now, like everyone who are effective in our industry, they build relationship with expert service providers, right? And you need to decide what are the functions that you want to keep in-house and what are the functions that you want to outsource, and how are you going to build a network that connects everyone, all of the stakeholders or the people that are part of the project as a unit, right? So you have a group of people, whether they are on your payroll or outside of your payroll, I call it like strategic outsourcing. How can you build that to be adaptive, flexible, right? If you don't have employees on your payroll and you have outsourced function, it's still a key function. They are part of your team. You can put it on and off. Like you could pause it for a while. You can pause it to make strategic decisions, right? Because if you need to make a strategic decision around your pipeline and you have 200 people and the part where you want to make a decision, you have to pay for 70 people, you are paying for them while you're making the decision, right? But if you have an outsourced component of your workflow, then you're more flexible in, managing your overhead, your capital, because capital right now is very expensive.
Right.
And that's another thing. Companies need to think about strategic outsourcing, being innovative in their corporate structure, network, not top-down corporate. That's like dinosaur time corporate structure, like really thinking, how can I be also innovative in the way that I build my team and outsource strategically so I can overcome recession and continue to have a viable company post this, tough period financially.
Sure. So just more specifically too, like what specific functions should these startups think about outsourcing? Like what do you absolutely say, okay, this has to remain in-house versus these are logical areas to outsource in the business?
Okay. So every company is different, but you need someone. Let's give an example for clinical development. Okay. Clinical development, a lot of people, they hire, a lot of companies, especially small companies, they go into a full service CRO, okay? Which means they do their clinical operations, medical monitoring, data analysis, safety, or they bring it all in-house, okay? Which is crazy. Like you want to build all of this infrastructure, or you want to lose complete control and give it away. So I try to tell small companies who like don't fully understand the functions is first interview people, understand the functions, understand the workflow and the goals of your project, okay, or program, because every program is slightly different. And once you understand that, then you hire groups. I prefer the boutique groups, smaller groups that either they do data management, absolutely, you need it independent from anything else. And statistics group. So also statistics, everyone like thinks data and statistics is the same. It's very different. Medical monitoring, having an MD. I think this should be in-house, having a medical monitor in-house. You could have an external consultant that is full-time work. You don't have to have this person on, but having someone that is wearing your brand, regardless if they are a paid consultant or an employee, medical monitoring is important to keep in-house, or, you got what I'm saying.
Sure.
And then project management in-house. Okay. Like don't outsource project management. You need someone who you fully trust that knows where every piece is moving. Manufacturing, everyone outsourced manufacturing. Some biologics, it's in-house, that's fine. That's why some companies are different, but manufacturing, everyone outsourced. But at the same time, you need a project manager in-house that understands supply chain and all of these aspects. For clinical development, this is for everyone, especially like first-time entrepreneur, even like old-timers. Like, this is your clinical trial. You need to interact with the physicians. You need to interact with the sites. Don't have anyone in the middle. You need to respond to the key stakeholders. Key stakeholders are the clinical sites, because they interact with the patients. Don't create a barrier between you and the clinical sites that are testing your product. There's typically a CRO, and this is something like a lot of people, when I was running Athera, no, we've never seen a sponsor that wants to like, you pay the CRO millions of dollars. I'm like, yeah, I pay them, but I want to be successful. So I need to take the extra effort to make sure that the sites have what they want, make sure that the quality of the patients and quality of operation is up to the standard that I want. So that's what I'm saying. Like, and of course the CEO has to be him in a small company. If I call up a site and they don't know the CEO name, that's a problem, because in a small company, you're not the CEO of Lilly or Pfizer. You're the CEO of a small company that they need this product to be successful. So being involved, engaged as a CEO, external partners that you outsource the work, they need to be part of your team. You interview not only the business development people, interview the actual person that is going to do the work. Right. And because, yes, they're not on your payroll, but they are your team, and they need to feel your vision, your mission, and this blame shifting. You know, if they're not all, if you're not successful in creating a single unit, you're gonna have blame shifting and a very weird dynamic. So this is where management come in and really try to create this single unit network structure. And that's another innovation that we're looking for in our companies.
Wow. Yeah, this is incredibly interesting. And I thank you for walking us through this and sharing so many of your insights. We're coming up at the top of the hour. We just kept going. So coming up on time here. And I wanted to just say, you know, thank you so much for sharing all of your insights with us and joining us today and giving us this masterclass. I know this is going to be very helpful for VCs that are looking into pharma, as well as founder CEOs that are trying to raise capital in this environment. So yeah, thank you so much. And Leen, if people want to engage with you or Propel, what's the best way to do so?
LinkedIn is the best way. We have a LinkedIn page on Propel, but also I'm very responsive in general. If an entrepreneur needs help, I would love to do that. I'm so grateful I ended up in the US and was exposed to the entrepreneurial journey. So I'm giving back and helping entrepreneurs being successful. I would love that.
I love it. I love it. Well, I hope people tuning in take you up on that.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, thanks for being here. And for everybody tuning in, thanks for joining us today. And we will see you next time. Take care.